Hi everyone, it's curiousraven. I have missed y'all. I thought of an idea that would be really cool if I narrated the horror narrators' ghost paranormal experiences. So please enjoy. I do want to say thank you to all of the narrators that came together and collabed with me on this. Y'all are amazing people. Thank you. I'm going to start off with the first story that I will read is something that GenSen experienced. This story takes place when I was 11 years old. I was visiting my grandmother's house in the country. There was not much to do out there besides go for long walks around the property and watch basic cable on the TV. The house is nothing fancy, built in the 1940s, and had some work done to it in the recent years. There are no neighbors for miles, and the road is made up of bare rock and ground. When you first get to the door and enter the house, you have two options. Go left and enter the kitchen through some curtains, or go right and enter the living room that also leads to the bedroom. Most nights, I would sleep on the couch in the living room because we could leave the window open, and it was very cozy when the cool night's air would hit me. But this night was very different. Now, growing up, my family would tell stories about ghosts they would see or feel in that house. But up to this moment, nothing has ever happened to me. So my guard was down, and I was just about to doze off when I felt a strange pressure on my chest. I was being pushed down into the couch. The air in my lungs was being squeezed out. But when I looked over my chest, there was nothing there. Filled with a fear, I could not even cry out for help. This moment lasted what honestly felt like hours. But to be truthful, I have no clue how long it was, because at some point I must have passed out, because I remember waking up in the morning in a cold sweat and feeling very sore. I'm still not sure what happened to me that night, but nothing like that has ever happened again, besides a few sightings of a lady in a white dress that my family believes is my grandmother coming by to check on us. Story number 2 is by Fleshwad. This isn't a very long story, but it's something that happened when I was younger and has always stuck with me. I must have been 8, and my sister would have been around 6. My mom would take us to our grandpa's house, her side of the family, very often. Her mother, my grandpa, passed away when my mom was only 9 or 10 years old in that house. There was this one time I remember sitting in the living room with my mom, sister, brother, and grandpa. My mom and grandpa were chatting while us kids were playing. I had to go to the bathroom really bad, but for some reason was afraid to go alone. I asked my mom to take me, but since she is talking to grandpa, she told me to ask my sister. My sister didn't want to go with me, even though I begged and begged. I finally just decided to go alone. The bathroom was a decent size. You walked in and you would pass a huge sink countertop with a mirror covering the wall, and then the toilet and tub would be at the end. I remember walking in. I can't remember if I closed the door or not, but I probably did. As I walked in, I gave a side-eyed glance to the wide mirror, and I saw my sister walking behind me, smiling. I turned around to yell at her for making me beg so much and saying no just to come after all. But when I turned around, she wasn't there. The bathroom was empty. It was so long ago, and I was so little, but I think I even remembered hearing her voice. I couldn't tell you for the life of me what she might have said, though. I ran back to the living room to tell my mom what had happened, and I asked my sister if she had followed me after all. My sister swears, even to this day, when I bring it up, that she never followed me into that bathroom. My grandpa doesn't live there anymore, and I don't know if my mom ever believed me. Although she does believe in paranormal. I don't think my sister did follow me, but if she didn't, what did I see? Story 3 will be by SwampDweller. I grew up in rural areas my entire life, whether it was a beef farms in Tennessee or living in the middle of nowhere, Florida. I've done it all. Growing up without access to most commonalities we have grown accustomed to. Yeah, that's right. We had no internet, no TV, and yep, you guessed it, no cell phones. I know, the horror, right? I like to think of us as the last true generation before the internet age. Not to say dial-up wasn't around, but most of us at that time really didn't have access to it. But honestly, it really wasn't all that bad outside of the long, boring summer days where we would be cooking alive in the fields, living in an old Civil War cabin. In the middle of nowhere, Tennessee definitely shelled out some interesting experiences. This story is going to be one of many I may share. That is, if you all enjoyed this one, that is. This story starts off like any other, really. It was a typical Friday night and my brothers and I were home alone. Being as we didn't have much of anything to entertain ourselves with, we began playing Manhunt in and around the house. Most of the time, we opted to stay indoors as it is pitch black outside. For a bit more context, our cabin was situated on top of a rather steep hill that had a long winding driveway running down it. Our cabin had a basement level, the main level where most of the house was, and the upstairs that had my room. We also had a back deck that was situated about 10 to 12 feet in the air, if I had to guess. Anyway, back to the story at hand. It was pitch black outside, and going much further than our front porch at night wasn't really something anyone enjoyed doing out there. The game was fun, but was already getting pretty monotonous with the little room we had inside. At this point, I had the bright idea to wander off outside and hide on the roof to make the game more interesting. This would soon be one of the biggest regrets in my life. At first, everything seemed fine. It was rather cold as it was nearing fall, and the weather was just starting to change. There was a slight breeze and the air was crisp and calming. After a few minutes of sitting up on the roof, though, something felt off. I'd been practically mesmerized by the sound of the crickets. I really thought that all the noise had suddenly stopped. This to me seemed very odd, but at the same time, being as naive as I was at the time, I didn't realize this only meant something bad was going to happen. I sit there as still as possible for a moment, trying to listen as closely as I can. I just can't seem to hear anything aside from the light breeze through the leaves. Then as quickly as the silence came, an eruption of noise came from the other end of the roof. For a bit more detail, we had a metal roof at the time, making it very easy to hear when things walk on the roof. It sounded like something had landed on the opposite side of the roof. I looked over, but could see nothing. This, of course, left me rather unnerved, and my first thought was to exit the situation. Before panicking fully, I remember it could be my brothers messing with me, since surely they would have given up on looking for me by now. I opened up my window and called to my brothers. They both ran up the stairs, shouting, complaining that the roof was off limits. As my oldest brother got to me, I asked him if he had been messing with me and making noises on the roof. He, of course, denied this and wanted to come up and investigate. So he and I slowly make our way to the middle of the roof and listen for a moment. Everything went quiet around us as it had earlier. At this point, I was already on the edge and ready to karate chop a demon in the neck if I had to. We hear what sounds like a pounding noise on the far end of the roof in the opposite direction of where we were standing. After what I think were 3 sets of 6 pounding noises, it charged us. Well, I think it did anyway. It sounded like hooves were running on the metal roof. But the only issue was we couldn't see a thing. The entire roof was clear, aside from us, that is. But somehow we were hearing these footsteps. It quickly approached us and began running circles around us. I held my arms out to try and see if I could feel anything, but I couldn't. The weirdest part of it all, though, was that I could feel the vibrations of the footsteps around us, but could not see or feel anything in the air. These footsteps circled us for what seemed like many minutes, but were probably more than a minute or so at most. It suddenly stopped circling us, and we could hear the steps trail off the roof and disappear into the air. We quickly ran inside and locked the windows and doors and huddled up inside, freaked the hell out. This is just one of many creepy stories I have had in this cabin. As I said at the start of this write-up, if you guys would like me to share more stories, I will gladly do so. Story 4 is by ladyspookaria. I used to live in an old campsite that was owned by the church but had been sold on. The living situation was complicated and not ideal. There were a lot of cabins that people would live in, and they would spend their time there. It was pretty run down, and my ex-partner's family didn't take care of the place very well. There was an old rundown house, and I wondered why no one lived in it. It wouldn't have taken much to get it presentable. I asked them, and they told me it was haunted by a child, and the spirit was quite malicious and enjoyed hurting people. The entire place had creepy vibes, and I saw other things there, like the toilet block or the small creek that ran through the property and the neighboring ones. I decided it was time for me to have a look to see for myself. I went inside during the daytime rather than at night. It had 4 to 5 bedrooms, a large kitchen, a study, a couple of bathrooms, and plenty of room. I snuck inside. I wondered if it had been used to store illegal items such as drugs or something. I didn't find any. There was still old covered up furniture inside, and there was a strange smell. I didn't feel comfortable being inside, but I suspected that was because I was asked not to go in there. I looked around at the old newspapers. It had been vacant for a while, and again, I couldn't see any real reason why it couldn't be used. There didn't seem to be any structural issues or signs of black mold. I walked around and I had a feeling that I was being watched. I called out, "Hello?" The only sound that I heard came from the birds outside. I opened some of the kitchen cupboards, checking the old cans and the other bits and pieces. I turned to walk down the hallway and I could hear the creaking of the wood underneath my feet. I walked in one of the bedrooms. The mattress was gone. The bed frame and other pieces of furniture were still there. They were older, looked to be from around 70s to 80s. I opened one of the vanity dressers. There was nothing. But as I did so, I had a feeling that I was being watched again. I looked at the open door, and there was no one there. I left the room and walked back out into the hallway. It was quite cold now. Remember, this was during the Australian summer, and there was no air conditioner, so it was pretty hot. I wrapped my arms around myself and shivered. I kept walking into one of the other bedrooms and could have sworn I heard footsteps behind me. Always behind me. "Hello?" I called out again. There was no sound. I wanted to keep exploring, but something made me decide that it was best to leave. As I made my way towards the entrance, I heard a child's laughter behind me. And given what I heard before, I didn't want to take any chances. I ran outside and closed the door behind me. As I was walking away from the house, I turned to take a look, and I saw the outline of a child in the window. Story 5 is by Creepy Clown Girl. It was the summer of 1987, and I was 17 years of age when this experience occurred. I lived at my aunt's house and decided I was going to visit my sister. We both lived in the same city that summer. My sister at the time was married and had 2 small children, and she and her family lived in a house with an attached farm to it. The best way to describe this house is like an old-fashioned redwood farmhouse, and though it was in the city, it was surrounded by trees, and in the back were a couple old shacks and chicken coops, but they didn't have any chickens. Although my sister had a front door, they always preferred everyone to use the side door. As you walked in, immediately to the right was a doorway that led to a long, narrow, dark, and creepy closet. And just inside the doorway, and to the right was a bathroom, and towards the end of the closet was another door that led into a barn. The side door opened into the kitchen though, and immediately there was a dining room. If you walked through to the right, you'd be in a big old living room, and then another right would be a bedroom, and another a bathroom. Just walking into that place gave me the creeps. I don't know why at the time, but it just did. My sister never really told me anything about the history of the house. I don't know if she didn't know or just thought nothing of it and didn't mention it to me. Well, like I said, on this particular day, I went to go and visit her. While she was doing her laundry, I decided I would go and explore because I was getting bored. Little did I know at the time my boredom and my curiosity could have never prepared me for what I was about to see, and it would leave an image in my mind that I would never forget. Anyway, after using the restroom, I walked down the long dark closet to the door that would lead me outside into the barn, and for some reason, as I approached the door, I went to open it and I just froze. Something told me not to open the door. I didn't listen to my gut feeling. As I opened the door, you had to step down 2 steps. I did this. I turned. For whatever reason, I looked up into the loft, and there was a guy up there with a rope in his hand. It was almost like he was staring right into my soul, even though I knew it wasn't me he was looking at. But either way, I just stood there frozen, unable to say anything. I watched as this guy put the rope around his neck, and then he jumped. I heard the rope tighten and the sickening snap of his neck as I tried to scream, but nothing came out. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it was going to explode. I don't remember how long I was there watching the ghost swinging. Stories 6 and 7 are by 242 Reads. Story 6. I grew up in a home that was not haunted. Well, it wasn't when we moved in to it. It is also no longer haunted either. Now if I confused you, I'll explain as I go. Now first let me explain the house so you can better understand the layout. When you walked into the front door, to your left was the living room, and to the right was a closet, and behind that was my room. That was a den that we used as my bedroom due to unforeseen circumstances, making from the front door 20 feet to the kitchen, and from my bedroom 10 feet to the kitchen. The stairs to upstairs was to the right, in between my room and the kitchen. There was a dining room to the left of the kitchen that had patio doors, and to the right of the kitchen was a family room with patio doors as well. All of this is important in the end. This house almost had nothing done to it when we bought it. We were the third owners, but it was only 2 years old. So this first story, we had one deck built out to the patio doors in the family room and above ground pool. I need to start this within the summer of 2000. One of my sisters killed herself. I want it to be said, if you ever feel this, please reach out to someone. No one will be happier with you gone. So she had a son, and he came to live with my parents. Me and my nephew were playing in the pool, laughing and having fun. We had a window or the patio doors open, and we could hear clear as day someone opening and closing the kitchen cabinets. Now I was 13 and my nephew was 6. We both were now scared someone came into our house. We never locked the front door. After much time, I got the courage to head inside. No one was there. Everything was where it belonged. Now I'll probably write this off if what happened next didn't. A while later, I was on the deck, on the phone when I look over at the patio doors for the dining room. There was my sister, standing there staring at me. I freaked the hell out. I don't 100% remember what I did, but I got in the house and no one was there. I saw her one more time the same way a few months later, this time waving for me to come to her. I found out later her ashes were in the dining room, right next to that door. I didn't know that at the time, and I never felt comfortable being in the dining room. Though my room easily could see into the dining room, I refused to look. I never saw her again, but I felt her a few more times. My eldest sister saw her a few times, but those are not my stories to tell. Please understand, my sister was not and is not tied to that house. She is tied to my nephew and our family. I do want to say that I am very sorry for the loss of your sister. Story 7. The next ghost I saw was when I was 15, and I had been talking to my boyfriend at the time about ghosts. So I do get that could be my mind playing tricks with me. I went to go use the washroom, and the second I touched the doorknob, I had a flash of a man. He was hanging from his neck. His eyes were empty. He had died sometime recently. I refused to leave my room, and he wouldn't leave. He was hovering around me till I told him, "It's okay. You are okay." It seemed to help him leave me alone. After this, I sealed my room with my will. Did I know I did that? No. Am I happy I did? Yes. Because the last one is the one that makes me shake in fear. You might be asking why a random guy got in, because I didn't know him. This home had not threshold to seal it. When you walk into a house and it feels like a home, that's a threshold. We didn't have it. I don't know why. I have theories, but I will never know why. Story 8 is also by 242 Reads. This last one scares me badly to this day, and I can't explain why. I was in my late teens, I think 17 when it happened. One night I was in my room on my bed with my cat Sammy. I was watching TV as I heard footsteps. I felt confused because everyone else was upstairs asleep. My cat got to the edge of the bed and stared at the door as the footsteps that I now recognized as high heels moved from my bedroom to the kitchen and then back, always stopping at my doorway. It would stand there for a moment and then pace yet again. A feeling of fear hit me. My cat never stopped looking at the door, as these steps kept pacing for about an hour. The next night, I had pushed them out of my mind till late at night again. I heard footsteps. This time, there was 2 sets, dress shoes and high heels. Again, my first thought was my parents, but they were upstairs asleep, and so was everyone else. My cat looked at the door, and I pet her as I did the same. A feeling of fear hitting me again, and this thought of, if you go out of your room, it will not end well. About an hour, till they stopped and I asked my parents if they had been up or heard anything that last 2 nights, and just got a confused look and a no. After the night, I cut off my ability, since it has scared me so bad. I can feel some ghosts, but I can't really see them anymore. My eldest sister believes in ghosts, but the rest of my family really doesn't. It made it hard to deal with these things. If anyone knows what those footsteps could have been, please tell me. I love to hear theories or ideas. Mine is demons or shadow people, but I have no clue. Thank you so much for listening to these stories. Stories 9 through 12 are by Matt's Chats. I will read a little message from Matt before I start story 9. Anyone can feel free to narrate these for your channel. Just please make sure to link my channel in description. If not, that's cool too. Please message me on Discord or Twitter what episode my stories are in. I would love to hear them. Do whatever you need to make this easier for you to narrate. Enjoy, everyone. And remember, these are all true. Story 9. Most recent. I unfortunately cannot remember the exact day, but it was around 10:30 p.m. Zay, my son, would not go to sleep, as he was restless and fighting his usual sleep schedule. Kids, what are you gonna do? Anyways, because his mom was in the kitchen making dinner, I decided to focus on getting him back to sleep. I picked him up out of his crib and thought I saw a human-shaped figure in the corner of the room. But because I was moving so fast to get him and make a bottle, I didn't notice too much. After trying to sit down on the couch and feed him his bottle, I realized that was not going to work. So I let my wife know that I was going to go into his bedroom and try to feed him and get him back to sleep. So I went in and sat down in the rocking chair and tried to feed him with the door to the kitchen open. After realizing that it was not going to work with the door opened, I stood up and walked over to the door and shut it. The room became pitch black. Now, I'm not afraid of the dark. I should make this clear now. So I shut the door and sat back down in the rocking chair and started to rock back and forth, hoping I could get Zay to sleep. He kept on moving side to side, trying to get comfortable. And as he was, I looked up towards the corner of the room, and that's when I saw a human-like figure from the floor just standing ominously in the corner. At that moment, I did not feel scared, more protective than anything. I wanted to ask why it was there, but out of respect and tiredness and not wanting to wake up my son, I just stared at it, and it stared back at me. 10 to 15 minutes went by of me just rocking in the chair and just staring at this thing. And it just stared back at me and never moved. Then my cat Misty pushed open the door, and as soon as the light hit it, I watched it dissipate into nothing. It was gone, and the cat pushing the door open woke Zay up. So I shooed her out of the room and closed the door, all while holding Zay. I sat back down and I looked at the corner as Zay put his little head to my chest and went back to sleep. The thing again formed out of the floor, and we continued just to stare at each other. 5 minutes went by, and again my cat opened the door, and it was gone as soon as the light from the kitchen hit it. This time I decided to leave the room with Zay in my arms and his bottle in my right hand. That was the last time I saw it. It still lingers around. Both my wife and I feel it in his room sometimes. Every time that we go in there, night or day. Whoever or whatever it is does not seem malicious. Story 10. I want to put out this disclaimer first though. The following story could have been a dream. I always thought it was one until, well, you'll read why I have trouble believing it now. Anyway, on with the story. The The story takes place 12 years ago. I was 12 years old, and my gifts were starting to happen. My aunt and cousin had stopped by to stay for the weekend. It was Friday. The day was normal, nothing strange about it. My cousin and I just hung out for a day. My cousin and I had to share a room, and her bed was against one wall and mine was located at the wall on the other end of the room. Hers was by the door and mine was against a wall at the other end of the room. That night, we both went to sleep as normal. As I was sleeping, I felt someone staring at me, so I woke up. I pulled the covers off of me and sat up. Standing at the end of my bed was a little girl, around 7 to 8 years old. Just a reminder, my cousin and I were 12, going on 13. She had blonde hair, blue eyes, and was wearing this bright heavenly looking dress. She was looking at my cousin at first, who was still sleeping in her bed snoring. Then she turned to me, smiled. It was a huge happy smile. Beautiful white teeth, no stains. She reached out her hand to me. At this point, I stood up and ran out of the room, yelling for my grandmother. "Nana, Nana, there's a strange little girl in my room." My Nana gets up and comes with me in the room. She was gone. My cousin was still snoring in her bed, so my Nana told me, "Matthew, you probably had a dream." I then explained, "No, Nana. I was wide awake. She even reached out to me." She then said, "Don't think about it anymore, honey. Just go back to sleep and forget it. Forget it happened." So I did. For years I lived thinking that it may have just been a dream. Fast forward 5 years, I was 17. I was told that the landlord who owned the house had lived there with his daughters. One daughter was a twin, and the twin had passed away when they were 7 years old. The house is located next to the highway, and one day the twin was outside playing with a ball, and it bounced into the road. As she went after it, someone had decided to start speeding around the corner, and unfortunately hit and killed the twin as she went out to get the ball. I still didn't think much more of the experience as more than a dream until one day. I went to the landlord's house to walk his dog back there, like I had hundreds of times before, but this time he let me into his house, and I look around at his antiques. I have this strange obsession with antiques since I was 14, ever since I was a kid. I was looking at his family photos when one caught my eye. The picture was of the twins, taken just months before the twin had been killed. It was a little girl I had seen 5 years prior. Blonde hair, blue eyes, same big smile. At that point, I connected the pieces and I have come to terms with my sighting. I saw her. The little girl. She appeared to me. I don't know why. Now I need to add some minor details here. My cousin and I both have brown hair. I have hazel eyes and she has brown eyes. One random day, soon after my visitation, I was going after something in the same road. And as I did, I heard a little girl yell my name, and I was the only one home. So I turned around and replied before I stepped into the road. As I did, a speeding car went by and would have hit me if I had stepped all the way out. What does everyone think? Was this just a strange dream and a series of strange coincidences? Or was it something more? Everyone's thoughts are welcome. Story 11. So, I already sent you my lighthearted experience of seeing my landlord's daughter appear to me and later on save me. Now I'm ready to share all experiences with you. Please feel free to edit this however you need to for narrating uploading. When I was 10, I moved into my grandmother's house. Some family problems were going on, and it was decided that I would go live with them. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary my first year there. That soon changed. My first experience with something strange happened when I was 11. It was a regular night, nothing out of the ordinary. I was sitting down at the table with my Nana, playing checkers and having a good chat. Suddenly we heard someone running through the hallway. My Nana didn't seem to react at all, so I decided to get up and investigate. She told me to leave it be, but I was a kid that was full of curiosity. It was dark, no lights on, and I did not think to turn any on. As I approached the hallway, I heard the footsteps stop. Then they suddenly started to run towards me at an extremely quick pace. So fast that I couldn't even react. Just as they reached me, they stopped. No one was there. I walked away scared, unsure what I experienced. As I was walking away, I turned to look back, and that's when I saw a bright light flash, followed by a large orb appearing, zoomed back into the hallway and disappeared. I never told my Nana out of fear of not being believed. My next experience happened a couple weeks later. I was playing outside alone. My back started to burn and itch, so I went inside and asked my Nana to look at my back. She suddenly asked me, "What did you do to your back?" I told her I had not done anything. I had not laid on my back or put my back against anything. I told her it just started burning. My back was covered in scratches all over my back. About 13 scratches in total, and they looked like nails had scratched me. The next experience happened over a period of time. The first one of multiple experiences happened on a night like any other. It was just my Nana and I living in the house. I was about 9 at the time, when we suddenly heard people working and talking in the basement. Loud bangs, the sounds of shovels digging up the floor, and the sounds of the floor being hit by something suddenly filled the house. I got scared and asked my Nana about it. She told me it was just ghosts working in the basement. I got up the courage to go look. I turned on the light and opened the door, fully expecting to see someone standing there. Nothing. No one. The sound stopped completely, and so I decided to go down and look. Nothing was touched, nothing was moved, and no one was down there. As I went to shut the door, I heard someone yell to me, "Let us work in peace." I quickly shut the door and walked away. Then the sound started up again. Fast forward 2 years later, and in the middle of the day, it started up again. Same thing, no one was there. Fast forward 4 years from there, my Nana had passed away, and my mom had moved into the house. I had a friend over, and we were in the living room, directly above the basement, when suddenly, the sound started up again. The floor started to shake, and the loud bangs and talking could be heard throughout the entire house. My mom comes in and asks me what the sounds are. Without skipping a beat, I tell her to let the spirits work in peace and leave them alone. Story 12. The next story takes place over a period of 8 years. Some backstory. The first part of this house was constructed in the 1850s and was a farmhouse. The next part of the house was constructed in the 1980s, when the landlord I knew who owned it decided to add it for his wife who had fallen in love with the house. So because of this, the house had 2 attics. One required a rung ladder to climb into and had no floor, just a series of boards about 6 feet apart from each other, and was mainly used as an insulation attic. The other was your usual attic with stairs that had led into 2 big rooms. Well, the attic with the stairs we will call Attic 1, and the one without stairs and a floor we will call Attic 2. Now on to the experiences. When I was told I had to go into the Attic 1, I always had a bad feeling, and the feeling of dread every single time I went into there. I always found myself struggling to go into the attic because of these feelings. Well, every time I'd go in there, I'd hear someone breathing from whatever room would be opposite from me, regardless of the day or time, and it would scare me. Goosebumps, cold chills, and the breathing would always happen every time I went into the attic, which made it rather difficult to have to go up there from time to time. One day I was asked by my Nana to go up there and look for something. She told me exactly where it would be. It was in room 2, in the box on the furthest corner to the right, so essentially the deepest you could go into Attic 1. I said okay, even though fear immediately struck me. I was not a scared child. Fear was not a part of me until I moved into this house. So I opened the attic door, and I thought I heard someone take a step at the top of the attic, like someone had just finished walking up the stairs. So I paused for a moment, took a deep breath, and proceeded to start up the stairs. As I was walking up the stairs, I could hear whoever was walking towards where I would be going up, which terrified me. But I proceeded anyway. When I got to the top of the stairs, a shadow quickly went by the doorway that I would have been walking into. So I looked to my left, and lying on a pile of boxes was the old baseball bat. I grabbed it, and it helped to relieve my fear slightly. As I started creeping towards the doorway, I could hear heavy breathing coming from the room I was about to enter. As I stepped into the room, it stopped. No one and nothing was there. But I knew I had seen and heard someone up there. It's possible to hide in the attic because it had no real corners or any places for someone to successfully hide in. So I continued to the corner to grab the item, and after some digging, I found it. So I quickly walked back to the top of the stairs, and as I started down, I then decided to look backwards, back towards the room I was in. I saw a shadow there. I jumped down the rest of the stairs, shut and locked the door quickly, and gave my Nana the item she had asked for. She asked me what happened, and all I could say was, nothing happened. Now I'm going to make the rest of Attic 1 experiences quick, because all of them were like that. Every single time I would go into the attic over the next few years, I'd hear the heavy breathing, watch things move completely by themselves with no possible way for it to happen, and occasionally saw more shadows moving by themselves. We would occasionally hear someone walking up there, but never chose to investigate because we already knew what it was. Now on to Attic 2. This attic, there were no words to describe this attic. When I asked my Nana about this attic one day, she told me to never open the door. Upon asking why, all she said was, "Matthew, there's something evil up there. Something so dark and angry. It should never be released." So I said okay, and never asked about it again, because I could see the terror in her eyes, and nothing ever scared her. One morning, as I awoke from a heavy sleep and started to get onto my PlayStation 2, I heard someone walking up there, 4 extremely large footsteps, which would be impossible because there was no floor to walk on, and when the force that these steps had, the boards would not have been able to support it. So I decided to wake up my Nana and tell her about it, but they had stopped by the time she woke. So she went back to sleep. This took place when I was 12. A short time later, I was outside throwing a ball against the side of the house where the window to the attic was located. I threw it too high and it ended up breaking the window. So my grandfather had to get a new window and go up there and fix it. My Nana was furious because she never wanted that attic door opened. This is when activity in the house started to ramp up. A couple years later, I was 14. I started to act rebellious against the ghost in the house and started to say and do whatever I could to get them going. Like an idiot, I'll admit, but I just didn't know any better. My bedroom door was located almost just underneath the doorway to Attic 2, and one night I decided to do my best to get them going. So I said, if you were truly real, you wouldn't be scared to make yourselves known. Big mistake. A moment later, I saw a shadow standing outside my door, underneath the Attic 2 door, and then I heard it say in a loud, old, stern voice, "No." And it quickly disappeared. The smell of roses. As I grew up in this house, I would at random times smell a strong sense of either cinnamon or roses. I would always go tell my Nana when it happened. It would never be in the same part of the house, and it was never at a certain time. It was always and completely random. When I asked my Nana about it, she told me that our landlord's ex-wife, who passed away in the house, loved the smell of cinnamon and roses. She also told me that when I smelt one or the other, it was her warnings It was her warning us that either something good or bad was going to happen. When we smelt cinnamon randomly without any source, something bad was going to happen, and vice versa. As an example, one day my cousin, who I mentioned in the story about the little girl, smelt cinnamon at the top of the stairs one day. She went outside to play that day like any other. After a while, she ran inside screaming. At one point, she had fallen and landed on a corn plant stump, and a part of it had gone up her nose. She was quickly taken to the hospital. One time when I was 12, I had smelt cinnamon strongly in the doll room. And later on that night, I had fallen on a trash bag after getting scared for my mom's ex-husband and had sliced my foot open wide from something sharp in the bag. Another time, after my grandma had passed, I smelt roses in one of the rooms, and later on that day I got a promotion and a raise at work. That isn't all that she would do though. Before the doll room had become such, it was just another living room with a TV, and it was where my Nana would sit and watch TV and rest. But every so often, out of the corner of her eye, she would see a full body silhouette that was pure white quickly dash from the beginning of the room into the hallway. It scared my Nana so much that she turned that room into the doll room, where she stored all her dolls, and moved her living room stuff into another part of the house. One day, I was sitting in the doll room, looking and studying all the antiques and other collectibles in this room. I too saw this white silhouette dash from the beginning of the room to the hallway, and after that, I did everything I could to avoid going into that room again. Thank y'all so much for listening. Remember to like and subscribe to my channel. I will also have all of the narrators' channels linked below. I hope y'all enjoyed these true stories from the horror community. We will be doing a live stream, probably on Tuesday of this coming up week, and Matt's Chats will be my co-host, talking about random stuff, but especially telling some ghost stories and weird stuff that's happened to us. I love you all. Please go check out my Patreon and my merch. Also, you can go and see me on TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Y'all, I will talk to you soon. But until then, remember, it's scary out there.